Hello everybody, I'm back for my first video in a long time. So I've been spending the summer mainly fishing. I did a couple of unboxings, but I've been mainly fishing at a cottage and enjoying myself, and I need to get back into watchmaking because I kind of miss it and hadn't been at it in a while. Anyway, I've got a pocket watch here, and it was wrapped up in tissue when it was given to me, and it is fairly antique looking pocket watch. It's an Admiral. It says Admiral here, Admiral pocket watch, and it's in fairly good condition. I guess the face is in face is in excellent condition. The hands are in excellent condition. The inside second hand seems to be a different coloring than the outside hands. The crystal, you can tell by tapping on the crystal. I use my guitar fingernails, but you can tell by tapping on the crystal that it's not glass. It's a plastic crystal, and it's slightly domed, as you can see, slightly domed. So that crystal has been replaced. This watch would have been early 1900s, and it would have more than likely been shipped from shipped from Switzerland to Canada and encased in Canada. I looked some information. Let me take the back off for a second. Well, let's look at the back and just look at the condition of the back. It's not that grave, I think. It's got wear, so this thing was used a lot. This pocket watch didn't sit in a drawer. This is a gold-filled pocket watch. It did have some markings or engravings on the back, and the engravings have kind of worn out. And the materials, it's basically down to the case materials. The gold's gone. Which is fine. I mean, if you're going to get a collectible and you want it to look pretty authentic, this is about as authentic as it gets. And if I take the back off the watch, sometimes if I have a hard time taking the back off, I use this cool little suction cup, and it is for pocket watches. It says vacuum watch opener. So you just stick that on the back like that. You push a little bit, and it sticks on. So it's like a suction cup. So don't have to do that today. So let's just remove the back here on this watch, and you'll see there's the movement, and it says there's a few things it says here. It says Admiral right here, so Admiral Watch Company. Now it's an Admiral watch, I should say, not an Admiral Watch Company, but an Admiral watch. And I did a little research in here, and a fellow named Henry Sandoz, he basically founded the Tavannes Watch Company in 1891. And he had a partner, and they were wealthy fabric merchants. The company was very successful, and they exported to several countries, including Canada, Russia, and the United States, and the Far East. And I suspect this was Canadian, cased in Canada. They were producing upward to 450,000 watches by 1905, and rose to about 750,000 watches a year. So it's pretty good. They trademarked or registered the Admiral name in 1904, and so it was one of the many watch names you see. You see Tracy Watch Company as well, and that's a name that's derived from Tavannes and Cyma, C-Y-M-A. I think that's the two dudes that started the company, which is T-A-C-Y, Tacy, not Tracy, Tacy. I was thinking of Dick Tracy, but it's Frank Tracy. Anyway, Tacy. So this watch, I believe, there's no serial number on this watch, and I'm going to put some different. I need to put a lens on here to have a closer look at this. And I'm trying to find out where it is. It probably fell on the floor earlier because I lost a lot of stuff on the floor. So let me just pause for a second. So this watch says 15 joules and 2 adjustments. So it's put my glasses on again, which I couldn't find my other glasses. I don't know where they went. I have to search for them because I use them while I'm doing the watch work. So anyway, it says 2 adjustments and 15 joules. So it's not a high-end watch, and you can see the wheels that are jeweled. So the center wheel is not jeweled. It's just a plain center wheel, and the third, fourth, 2, 3, 4, fourth wheel is jeweled. The escapement's jeweled, and of course you got some jewels on the pallet, and and upper lower jewel on the balance cock. So so the movement looks like it's in fairly good condition. It's a little bit marked up here, and this watch was given to me saying it's not working, or it's overwound. People tend to use the term overwound, and it's really not overwound. It's just wound a lot, gets gummed up, and then it won't work and stays wound. So the case markings on the inside say Wadesworth, I believe. Let me look again here, see if my memory is going, because I see a lot of these things. I'm looking close again here. Wadesworth, yeah, Wadesworth warranty 20 years, and there's a serial number in the case, and there's some markings where this watch has been repaired or cleaned by a jeweler. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I think 8 markings, and the numbers you normally see inside are the jeweler's catalog numbers. Actually 9, I see another one, and there's usually 9 catalog numbers are they're basically marking in a register the repair they did, and they just have a number in the register, so it's not usually a date that they did the work. I have seen a few that had a date, like this one says there's a number there that says 6/13, so is that the 6th month, and 1913, because that might make sense, but not for sure. So there's another one over here actually, so I'm up to 10. So 10, this one says 14/4, and I believe 19, that'd be 2019, or sorry, 1919, 2019. So that is a date mark on the inside there. So it's a Wadesworth case, and so that's a North American made case. I think Wadesworth is North American. I could look it up, but it says it has a 20-year guarantee, and that guarantee is 20-year guarantee for the gold not to come off. That's what the guarantee meant. And usually when there's a 20-year guarantee, this gold is 14 karat gold. And when you get like a 10-year guarantee, it's 10 karat gold, and sort of thing. So it's not bad. It's a good. They go to 25. I don't think I've seen 30, but perhaps there is. You guys can just write notes and correct me if you want. So 20-year guarantee, that's not bad. Wadesworth case. So my guess here is that this watch went to a jeweler somewhere in Canada, and this is a Canadian person whose great grandfather owned this watch, and it went to a Canadian jeweler. The movement was probably shipped from Switzerland. It says Swiss on it, and then it was moved cased in Canada. I had one I made a video on earlier that was from Winnipeg, and I got a history of the jeweler that cased it and everything. It was kind of cool. And the person that sold me the watch, I gave them back the information on the watch and the history and everything, and they thought this is pretty remarkable. And so that's what this watch is. When I look at, so what I did this time, instead of just rambling on through, I said, okay, let me look at a book here that I have. So before I go through, and of course I got a magic card deck card in here. So this book is actually pretty easy to find. If you look up this technical manual, 1575 is the number. That's not the age. War Department Technical Manual. It's a U.S. book, and this is from 1945, and this is back when they trained technicians on how to repair pocket watches that were used by the soldiers or other folks, right? So this watch is from the War Department is very comprehensive, and it goes through watches and pocket watches and timers and different types, and you know, it even has like how to wind a spring in, and has Hamilton pocket watch 21 jewels railroad grade. So a 992B, it has a whole section on how to work on a 992B, which is pretty amazing. And it goes through a lot of detail. It also goes through you know, how to look at the readings on your timing machine and what do they mean, right? Where are the problems? Is there a problem in one of the wheels, and you know, they've got a tooth missing or something, or it's dirty, and you can see by looking at the waveform. So it's got all that troubleshooting and adjusting part. It talks about the hairspring and what you need to do to set the hairspring, centering the hairspring within the balance assembly, removing the hairspring, all kinds of good information here. In the front end of it, before I get into what I wanted to talk about, it has, I'll just turn my camera around a little bit here. It has a list, general maintenance tools and supplies, which is pretty cool. And then it has, you know, your basic watch repair guy and what that person's got to have. And back in those days, it might have been a guy. So I know they put soldiers, when they came back from the war, they put them to work doing watch repair. But and this book is from 1945, so who knows? This might have been the master plan. But it has all of the tools you use to do basic, strip it down and clean it. And it's got spring winders in here, and it's got demagnetizing device here. I actually have one of these old ones. And it's got all kinds of stuff in here. So case openers and screwdrivers, etc., etc. And then and this here is just basic, and they call it ordnance maintenance right back then. But this is basic watch repair equipment. And they have the echelons: first echelon, first, second, third, fourth, fifth echelon. And that really is in the U.S. military context. It's organizational level, intermediate level, and depot level. So in the Canadian context, it's first line, second line, and third line. So this would be a third line maintenance book, not necessarily a second line back shop, but third line maintenance. And then it says this is the senior watch repair tool set, senior set number 1, and it's got a lot more in there. It even has a compass for magnetism, checking the magnetism. Don't know where that compass is, trying to find it, but it's got calipers in there, and it's got you know, pin vices and files, and you know, you're doing some serious watch repair when you're into this kind of equipment. And then we've got another page of this stuff with staking sets and vices, and again, more stuff that's needed for doing specific watch work. Actually, even here they've got, this is for working with a pallet fork, I believe. It says W. If I look up W, it's, yeah, so setter jewels and pallet stones. So that's for setting the pallet stones and the jewels. So that's it's pretty serious stuff. I'm not sure if this looks kind of like that. Oh, that's a different one. Sorry, this is a different one. Similar though, very close. It's almost the same as, so look at this one here. This one here. So this one is not used for setting the pallet stones, but anyway, I got some funky tools as well that are similar. I have probably all of this equipment, right? So no doubt. Anyway, so this book has that, and it just has a bit general set for there's your watchmaker's bench and other things, right? And of course, it's got all of the technical numbers for things, because you'd go to the logistics folks and you'd order that equipment and stuff. So, but one value of this book, when you find this, I've got 2 copies of this book actually, because somebody at work actually said, hey, you're into watchmaking, why don't you might want to use this, right? So what's cool here, I marked it as section 3 has got the general ordnance or ordnance maintenance and inspecting the pocket watch. And it says here, fundamentally, inspection is for the purpose of determining whether or not the timepiece is serviceable, which is true. Serviceable means does it work or not. If it's unserviceable, it's not working, right? That's the term. It's also to determine if the lack of first, second echelon maintenance is the cause of the apparent failure of the timepiece, meaning did they actually do maintenance on the watch in first line and second line, like cleaning? Did they clean the watch? Is that the problem with the timepiece? Serviceability, as interpreted in this section, is the ability of the instrument to perform its intended function completely. Man, that sounds like a military definition for sure. So it says inspect before disassembly, which I've probably not done. The completeness of the watch, so I've done that. And if you look at the watch, it's all there. The bail is there. Sometimes you get watches where the bail's missing or the crown's missing. Sometimes there's some screws missing. The case screws are all there. All the screws for the plates are there. There's really no issue there at all. And then it says look for markings, ordnance markings, just a serial number and stuff. I could not find the serial number on this watch. I'm not sure if I'm blind or what, but I couldn't find the serial number. So sometimes on the Swiss watches, the serial number is under a plate. So when I strip this thing down, I'm more than likely going to find a serial number. Then you look at the overall case, inspect it for dents, discoloration, scratches, loose crystal, tight fit, bezel, and the back the case, right? And worn or loose bow. So this one is not worn and it's tight as hell. So that's probably good. And broken or loose sprung hinges. So that this doesn't have any sprung hinges because it doesn't say spring. It says sprung because it's not a case, a hunter watch with a case in the front or a case in the back that might spring open with a dust cover perhaps, because sometimes these pocket watches have dust covers and then the case back and they hinge back over. So this one just screws out, and actually the threads in the screw are very good. I tried taking it apart and putting it back together again, and I take the back off, put it back on, and the threads on these were excellent, because I've had watches that I've had to go in with a screwdriver and my finest screwdriver and very carefully just nudge the threads where I see there's a bend and try to get the bend out of the threads in order to recover it. And then you have to look at the threads on the other side to make sure there isn't a bend there, because sometimes somebody will force the back on the watch and it's not fitting properly, and then they'll just force the screwing and they'll ruin the threads, and that ruins the case, and it's very hard to rethread these watches. So sometimes I'll go in there with a screwdriver and deal with it that way. So but looking for dents and discoloration and stuff, I already talked about that. There are some dents in the back of this watch. You can get rid of the dents on a watch. It's very tricky. It's up to the user or the owner of the watch whether they would actually want these dents removed. I got a piece of some equipment here that I can show you, I think. I can grab it here, yeah. So I bought a kit a while back. If you can see this, it's got this is what you pound, and these are all of the heads that you use of different size and roundness and flatness, and you effectively place this down like that, look for the dents, and you work them in. So you work with a wider, you can bang the bigger dents in first with a sharper thing, and then work it wider, and then you work it sort of left to right or right to left, and you can also do it in a circle as well as you bump and pound it. I think I might have made a video on that where I showed dent removal, because I have removed some pretty significant dents in pocket watches. This is someone else's watch, so I will probably leave those dents there, because those dents might mean something to that person. They're not looking at selling it. They're not looking at it being of a higher value. They're looking at it from a personal perspective, where their great grandfather owned this watch, or sentimental. I was thinking of sediment in the bottom of the lake. Sentimental position where these dents mean something. This dent was made by their great grandfather when he was working on the farm or doing something, or he's a banker or something. So you typically leave those dents the way they are, and it's not affecting the function of the watch, and it's also not affecting being able to put the case back on. So that's where you look at the actual the condition of the back of the watch and whether you want to do anything with that or not. So again, if you want to, perhaps if it's a sentimental thing, then you leave the dents there. If it's not a sentimental thing, you might want to clean up all the dents, but I only do that if the gold was still there and the watch looked like it was mint. I might try to make it more mint, right? So in this case, it's not mint. It's not probably also not a high value watch, given that it's not highly jeweled. It's not 19 jewels, which it might have been before 1900, or 21 jewels, which might have been after 1900. So it's not a highly jeweled watch. When I find the serial number of this baby, I'll probably look it up and see what it has. So the next thing you look at is the dial. So we inspect the dial and look at the markings and see if there's any problems with the dial itself, the general appearance, the legibility of the dial. Can you read the numbers, right? So I'll translate this for you. So look at the dial. Can I read the numbers? Is it in good condition? Well, this dial is like mint. So this is a very, very nice dial. So excellent dial. No problem there at all. I've looked at it really closely. I'll take some Rodico as well when I clean this watch, and I'll tap around the dial to take out any little marks or any dirt that's got inside that dial. And you also have to determine whether you can wind and set this watch. So does it actually functionally work, right? There's a lot of information here that talks about what could be the problem and all that kind of stuff. But if I look at the watch before I get into the hands and the balance assembly, if I look at winding it and setting it, what I'll do is see, can I set this watch before I start winding it? And to pull the crown out, instead of pulling it like this, I take my hand here and I put it across the body of the watch, the case, like that. And I take my other hand here and I grab the bottom of the crown with my thumb and my forefinger, right? It's like forefinger. Our forefathers, I think that was Abbott and Costello. It was Abbott and Costello, where he said, "Our forefathers," and then Abbott Costello said, "I didn't know we had forefathers." Anyway, that's a bad joke. And that's what they had the joke about the mutter too, where the horse was called a mutter. I guess it walked in the mutter. And he said, "I had two mutters." I go, "I knew I had two mutters. I thought I had one mutter." Anyway, I used to like Abbott and Costello. Anyway, I'm old. So there you go. So I pull that out like this. So I'll put a little pressure downward and I'll put a little pressure upward, and that often just brings it out nicely. So by doing it this way, I'm not pulling on it in an uncontrolled way. I'm grabbing it like here, and I can put a lot of pressure on it this way without it being out of control and perhaps damaging the stem or something. So now that I've got it out, I'll just turn the dial and see. It's probably pretty stiff. It's pretty stiff, right? So it's not that bad actually. And if it's not turning properly, there's a number of things that could be wrong with it, right? So the cannon pinion could be either too tight or too loose, one or the other, which could cause a big problem. And that's the cannon pinion goes over the top, and the minute wheel or the minute dial goes onto the cannon pinion, and the hour goes onto the hour wheel that goes over the top of the cannon pinion. So you have to have the cannon pinion has to be able to slip a bit for setting the watch when it rotates around the center stem. That's not the right word. Pivot, center wheel pivot. But then when the watch is actually ticking, it has got to have enough friction to grab or to allow the minute hand to go around in a circle as the center wheel turns. So it's a little bit of both. In fact, I think I started the watch. If you look down, if you look here closely, you'll see the darn thing is ticking, right? So that's good news. So if you are examining a watch and it's not ticking, you can also, I've also seen the seconds hand, I'll say. It goes right over the pivot of the, I want it to say the fourth wheel. I might be guessing here, but anyway, the fourth wheel pivot. I've actually made those wheels and the pivot before, but it goes right over the pivot, and sometimes it's off-centered, and the person's installed the second hand, and they've missed the pivot itself, and it's jammed in there. I've seen that before, or this. You can check this. The hand itself might be touching the face, and that will stop the watch if it's touching the face. Also, you can take the. Let me take the face off. See if I can remove the face of this watch without damaging anything. It's pretty tight, so, and I tend to just, if your hands have got to be a little sticky to move it properly, right? So remove it properly. So this was a bit difficult, which means it's been on there probably forever. So I'll look at that, take off the crystal and have a look at it. And when I turn the hands, I don't like going backwards when I turn the hands, by the way, because it kind of goes against the direction the watch wants to go. But when I turn the hands, I look at the hands right on top of each other and look at it sideways. And as you can see in the video there, you can see that gap. And that's a nice gap. So there's no issue there. The hands aren't touching. And when the hands go around down close to the 6 o'clock position, there are cases where the hour hand will touch the second hand if the second hand is up too high. So I usually get it close, and then I look at it sideways again and see if there's clearance between the hour hand and the second hand to make sure it can go through no problem, because I've had watches stop kind of on the hour and going, okay, what's going on here? It goes all the way around, touches it, so less than 12 hours later the darn thing stops. So that's one of the other reasons why the watch might stop. The other thing I do is I look at the hand from behind to see if when it was pushed in or pushed onto the hour wheel or onto the cannon pinion, is it sideways at all? Is there a slope to it? It wouldn't necessarily make it not run, but you can see the precision that the watchmaker had when they actually put it back. There should be zero slope, and the distances should be really good between the gap between the minute hand and the hour hand should be perfect with no issues, as this is here. So it looks like it's pretty good here, so no problem. This case was also made if you have a lever set watch, the lever is usually here, and you stick your thumb and you pull it out, and then you can set the watch. So the higher end watches that I've shown you in past videos are lever set watches. Actually, this watch here that I eventually have to put together again, it's a Hamilton, and it's a 992 watch movement, 992 movement, and I've got to reassemble this sometimes. It's been sitting like this for like 4 months now, so I can't remember, but I had to do some work on the wheel or something on this. Anyway, so generally I check the hands to make sure that they're lined up nicely and their spacing is nicely and the condition is nice. You can get scratches on these hands and stuff from misuse, and also when you put the hands back, it's good to have them exactly lined up to the top. And when I remove the hands and I put a piece of plastic over the top and I put take my little hand removing devices that I have that look like, I've got 2 of these, one on each side, and I go boop and pop the hand out, and it gives you some leverage. I put a piece of plastic on top so you can't scratch the face of the watch, which you don't want to do, right? And once I remove the movement from the case as well, I've got winders that I can use to actually wind the movement, and I've shown you that in other videos too. And I've got hand setting tools to set hands back on again, and I've also shown you that in a bunch of other videos. So I examine, anyway, this is examining the winding and setting mechanism, so that works. The hands are not rubbing, and it's not, oh, the other thing is the hands could rub on the crystal. They could be too long as well, and worst cases they rub on the top of the crystal. If they put the wrong crystal on, it's not domed properly, then it's not going to allow the hands to move around, and that's the same with watches as well, not just pocket watches. So you got to check and make sure it's absolutely perfect, and you kind of get used to doing that. When I first started watchmaking years ago, I had a hard time putting hands back on and stuff like that, and I used to use Rodico to help me guide it and all kinds of stuff. So that's the general look at that. So also putting the case back on, you don't want to force anything here, so you lightly hold it. You hold it very lightly like that, and then you let it find the threads. And sometimes if I'm doing this and I realize that it's not finding the threads, I'll back it off and try again. And sometimes I'll just stop altogether because I've given up, and try again a little later because for some reason it's not fitting. And some of these are just tricky, right? I also will look at the edge once I've put it in a little bit and got a little bit of a grip. I'll look at the gap around the case here, and if this gap is too big on one side and too small on the other side, that means that there's no way the threads are in right, because it's gonna, and I'm gonna strip it. So this one here, it seems like it's right. It's a little bit tight, but it was a little bit tight when I took it off as well. So, and I'll end up cleaning the threads on the inside of the face here, and I'll end up cleaning the threads on the case itself, right? So I'll have the little more contact on the threads, and I'll apply just a little tiny bit of oil because I don't want dirt to accumulate, right? So that's examining that. Push that down and it clicks into position. If this didn't click into position or come out properly, I'd have to adjust the watch in here. I'd have to make some adjustments to the crown and the stem and the device. I'll have to look up the name that grabs that, and I've got tools to do that too. I don't want to have to show that to you, but trust me, I've got tools. So then you got the balance assembly is the next thing you look at, as it says here. So pretty much looked at everything else, and everything looks pretty good, not too bad. The watch was running like this a bit, so when I did this, I got it running just a bit like that, but if I turn it over, will it stop? It keeps going. So one thing that's really good is that I think that the balance is not too bad. So I check the freedom of movement of the balance, right? So is it rotating at all? If I wind this watch up, will this balance rotate a lot? And I'll just wind it up a bit and see what's going on. And because I'm a modern man, so now this watch probably hasn't been wound in a long time. What I'll do is, so the way this works is that, so you wind this up, wind up the watch. These are the various parts of the watch, and just, I know the parts of a watch, but I'm going to cheat here, okay, and see if I can refer to this book again, right? Because it's pretty cool. And it has all of the various parts of the watch all listed here. So this would be, if you look right here, this is called the crown wheel, right? So that's that there. So that's the crown wheel. I'll move out a little bit here. And that crown wheel goes to a ratchet wheel, and that's this wheel here. And underneath that, there's a ratchet wheel screw. Underneath that screw is the barrel, is the mainspring barrel. This little jobby-do here is called jobby-do-hickey, as my dad used to call it. It's called a click spring, right? So when I release the pressure on the watch, I use a toothpick, push up on that, hold this, and release it back, right? And that's the click spring on the watch. And then that brings power to the center wheel, as it says here. And then there's the center wheel pinion, which is on the bottom of the wheel. So the pinions, there's the wheel on the top. A pinion is just another wheel. It's a stubby wheel, and it's got the gears, and there's ratios between the gears and the pinions, and the next gear and its pinion, and the next gear and its pinion, and that's how the watch is driven. As you can see here, the mainspring, this mainspring which is underneath here, mainspring barrel, would push the pinion on this here, and the pinion is connected to this gear which would drive the third wheel pinion. So the wheels are named. 1 is the mainspring, 2 is the center wheel, 3 is just it's an intermediate wheel actually, and then the fourth wheel is the wheel that actually has the second hand on it, and it's fourth wheel pinion, and then that drives the escapement and the escapement wheel and the escapement pinion, and then you've got the pallet fork with its jewels, and basically it releases and sets on both sides as it spins back and forth and forces the mainspring to go back and forth. So in this case, it's actually running pretty well. It's got, but I want to see what the amplitude is. Now, I can cheat on looking at the amplitude, which is a really good trick. So if you've got an iPhone, which everybody in the world does, I opened my iPhone up. I can't show it to you right now because there might be some confidential work stuff in there. So let me look at iPhone. There we go. So I put the iPhone on video mode and on slow motion. So slow motion video, then I zoom in, right? I don't need much light to do this. And you can sort of see me doing it right now, right? And then I wait till it settles in, and I go record. And then I just need to record like for 3 seconds. And then when I hit playback, I look at the playback, and I can see one of the wheels, it's going all the way around and then back again, right? And it's got about, I'd say, 370 degrees maybe. 365 plus another 10 degrees. So that's I'll call it the swing, not the amplitude, because the amplitude would be half of that. But that's the swing on it, which means that it's going all around that far, which is really good. I don't know what the accuracy of the watch is yet or any of that. But I do know that it's got a fairly decent swing for a really old watch. So the trick is, can I get it up higher than that when I clean it? And this probably hasn't been cleaned in a lot of years. So what I'll do is I'll take this watch. Well, I should read a bit more of this here, just for a second, okay? To see if I haven't missed anything here, because I've looked at the to make sure the watch actually runs, which tells me that I just have to basically clean it, right? So it says check the balance wheel for trueness, and the balance pivots for end shake and side shake. Well, I can't do that until I've stopped the watch actually, and I can take a pair of tweezers and move it. But when it's running that well, I typically don't grab the balance with a pair of tweezers and move it up and down, because you could foul the pivots on either end. So it's not a smart thing to do. So I could check it for magnetism, and what you do there is you've got a little compass like that, and you put the compass over the watch, and you see whether anything happens when it goes over the watch. Does it align? Does it do anything? And you know what? That's not too bad. That seems like it's fairly reasonable. It's moving just a bit, right? But it's not. I would not say there's a magnetism issue here. And could run it through the demagnetizer before I complete the assembly. So you check it through for magnetism. I would normally write notes for all this, but I'm doing the video right now, so I don't need to write the notes. And I can check the hairspring to see if it's true, and I can check the balance to see if it's flat. I can do all that after I've taken the balance out, and I've removed the balance from the balance cock, or they call it the balance bridge in here because I don't want to use that word. And then I can check the trueness and all the rest of that. And it's not, again, it's not a high-end watch, so I want it to run and I want it to be fairly accurate. I do have an app in here that can tell me whether it's plus or minus X seconds per day. So let me have a quick look at that. Let me pause for a second. So there's my app. It's called Swiss Connect. I bought the little device that you use to grab onto the movement, but you can just do it with your cell phone and hit analyze, and it'll collect data for a minute. So you can watch while this is happening here. I don't want to talk too much, but at the end of this, it'll tell me what the beat error is and what the amplitude is and whether I got an issue. So this is incredibly exciting. So it's halfway through the process because you can see the bar moving along. If I talk too loud, it's going to pick up my voice and give me bad results. Alright, there we go. So it says the amplitude is 309 degrees and that the beat error is 0.3, which is excellent. So you can get a beat error at 0.5 or less is excellent. It's plus 70 seconds per day, so that's not good. You'd have to slow that down. If I look at the regulator arm here, it's kind of in the middle, so there's some room to ride the regulator pins along the hairspring to slow it down by making the hairspring bigger. I'll just save that, and I can add that as a new watch and add the photo. Take the camera. There's a quick photo. Bam. Use photo, and then I'll just name the watch and stuff. So I'll do that later. Anyway, so you saw that this thing is running plus 70 seconds a day, which means it's running a bit fast. And you know, in watches, if it's running fast, it's usually dirty, and that just means that the balance is shortened by the dirt. There's less power going through the various wheels, like from the mainspring over. The mainspring's probably super old. I'll open the barrel up, have a look at the mainspring, and clean it off, and then put it back. If the mainspring is like completely set, which means it's just going to stay swirled and not move at all, then it could be an issue. I'll also, when I reassemble it, I'll see how much power there is from the beginning of a wind to the end when it's starting to run out, and there'll be a little less power on the watch when it runs out. And there's other designs that allow a watch to be kind of in the middle of when the beginning of the wind of the spring and the end of the wind, and they kind of take the front end of it out. And I have another watch that's got a mechanism that looks like a star on the inside, and it prevents it from using it beyond those wind points. So anyway, I've checked that. The balance, it runs pretty good. It says 300-ish degree amplitude. I don't believe that because it was 365 on the swing, which would mean it's a 180 amplitude. But the program Swiss Connect says it's 300, which is fantastic. And I'd suspect the oil's all dried out. So the other thing, so I've checked the train wheels. Well, I haven't checked the train wheels, but obviously it's working, so that's a good sign, right? Sometimes the watch will stop because the wheel is like, if I look at, there's a train wheels there, and if you're looking at the center wheel here and the arm here, and there might be a bend in the arm, or there might be a broken tooth here somewhere that will stop the watch. Often it's a bent center wheel, so someone's pushed down on that or something, or the main, or the balance is actually touching the center wheel as it goes around and scraping against it, or all kinds of different reasons that the watch could stop. So this thing seems to be working. I think the person that owns it said that it runs for a while, which, and I hate when they say that. It runs for a while, which means it doesn't run for a while as well, a long while. So what I'll do is I'll disassemble this watch and make sure it's I'll check the wheels to make sure there's no problems. I'll be cleaning the wheels and the pinions anyway to make sure there's no dirt in the wheels and pinions and stuff. So also in this book it says if there's a record for the watch when it's been repaired and stuff, but there's nothing near there. Regulation: if the timepiece is running and appears to be in serviceable condition, set it according to the master timepiece and allow it to run in a horizontal. Horizontal would be flat, and 2 vertical positions for 24 hours in each position, and noting the variations in time in each position to determine if there's a poising error. I don't need to do that because I've got this really cool software that I paid $700 for on my computer that can tell all that stuff. So I use the software. This is old school where you write all this stuff down. And this discusses wristwatch and railroad grade watch variations and what you might do there. So as part of the inspection. So and that's it. So that's all this has to say about the inspection so far. There's inspecting different types of watches and stuff. And in the back of this book, I believe in the back, it's got all the troubleshooting. So you can go through all the troubleshooting if there's a problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this watch run. I'm going to set the time and let this watch run until it runs out. And when it runs out, I'll know. I kind of know whether it ran out or not because I can tell by the wind on it. And if the wind is loose, when I do this with the crown, if it's a loose wind on the crown, that means it ran out completely. You can do things like marking the wheel, or you can do all kinds of stuff. Plus, one of the easier ones is like I'll set the time on it, right? And so let's just set it at 12 o'clock, right? I broke my rule. I'm going backwards. So I'll set it at 12 o'clock, 12 high, and I'm going away, and I'm going to come back on Sunday. I'll be looking at this watch on Sunday again when I come back, and I'll see how far it went around. So it either went around once. I'm hoping it went around more than once, but I get 24 hours off it. But at least if I see it's moved to maybe 10 o'clock or whatever, I'll know that it's only gotten the 10 hours. If it's over here, somewhere in this range here, and the wind is super loose here, then I know that it's gone around 12 hours and a little further, right? So because I can check the wind on it and say, okay, that's obviously done more than 12 hours. And it's fully wound. I don't want to wind it too much because it's an old watch with an old spring. So I tend to just do a 1-day wind, which allows it to run for 24 hours, and not try to just ream in on it, right? So in general, it's a nice Admiral watch. It wound. It's running. It's nice. Like I said, I checked the timepiece itself, and it says it's got a plus 70 seconds a day. So there's no need for me to adjust that right now because it won't hold adjustment anyway when it's not cleaned. And then I've got I looked at all the outside of it looks fine. The movement looks fine. It doesn't look like there's any problems there at all, which is good. The hairspring looks. The other thing you can do is check in slow motion and see whether the contraction of the hairspring is normal. So I already took a video. So if I look at the actual video here, and I look at it in slow motion, can I see the hairspring expanding and contracting at sort of a uniform pattern? Because a watch that's magnetized, the hairspring might be stuck on one side, and you see it bellowing out on one side and not the other. and then you've got to demagnetize it because the hairspring is magnetized. So I don't think this is, because it looks fairly good. Doesn't look like it has that issue, and it has a fairly good amplitude too. So this is phase one, I'll call, of the video. It's you know, like I said, I haven't made a watch repair video in a while, and I got to go soon, so I'm actually not going to work on the watch right now. I'll probably start working on it on Sunday or next week. Winter is a coming, so I will have plenty of time to do work on watches, but I probably will clean this watch next week, and I'll make the second video for the cleaning, so you can see me disassemble this nice Admiral timepiece. And it's very Admiral of me to do that. Admirable, maybe? Not admirable? Anyway, so I will disassemble this timepiece, and I will fully clean it, and I'll measure. I'm hopefully get a little bit more amplitude out of it, but the amplitude is pretty darn good now. I'll check the pivots on the balance staff to make sure the pivots on the balance staff are good. So let me just show you that in a second. Just grab. I'm sure that there's a balance staff in here somewhere. Let me see if I can find it. I got all kinds of friction jewelling and everything. So the balance hangs on to this. Probably looks like this one here. This balance staff, and these are the pivots on the end. So when that thing was going tick tick tick, those are the pivots on the end, and you want to have them. You want to have the slightest bit of round on the end of those pivots, so it's not completely flat. There's some discussion either way on that, but everything I've read and what I've done in the past, you need a little bit of round in that. So I'll check the pivots on the balance staff, and I'll make sure that I've cleaned the balance and the balance staff so there's no dirt on it. And if there's an issue, grime, corrosion on the pivots, I'll run that in my J-Cot tool, and I'll be able to clean the ends of those as well very carefully. And that means I have to take off the hairspring, and I could probably leave the roller table on. That's attached here. So this is the balance actually fits on here, and then the hairspring would be on top of the balance, and the roller table would be on this side here. So I'll be able to do that. I've made videos of making balance staffs, and I've made quite a few balance staffs. I kind of like it. I haven't done one yet this summer, so it's been a long time, but I got to get back at it, or my skills will be weakened. So, and actually, this is a Bowley lathe, I believe. No, it's a Peerless. So I actually have one of these Peerless lathes, just like that. And I actually have one of these old motors. So, because I have 13 lathes, my friends, 13 lathes. But I only have one set of chucks. So, I don't need 13 sets of chucks. So, and I do have a chuck for holding plates and stuff like that. So, I've made plenty of, and I do have all of this here too. What are these called? I can't remember. Anyway, I have all this too for cutting, but I do all my work by hand. So anyway, so that's something I'll end up checking as well when I inspect the various wheels. I'll check and make sure the wheels are the pinions on the pivots on the end of the wheels are good after they're cleaned. And then the last thing, the very last thing I should say, is that I'm going to check each one of the jewels on the inside of this watch to make sure that they're not cracked, because very often you'll see a pocket watch it's running, it's in perfect condition, and then you've got I have a piece of paper I can write on here. Let me see. I need instructional paper here. Let me just move over here for a second. Oh my God! All right. So yeah. So time for a jewel lesson. So the plate. Say the plate is like that. Like that. I'm just making a fake plate here, right? And you've got a jewel setting in here like this, and the jewel's like that, and then you'll see that this is a rubbed in jewel, so it'll have a sleeve of metal in here, and then this part here is compressed over the jewel to hold it in. Then you'll see the jewel hole like that, and this is for like the fourth wheel, and then sometimes you'll see the jewel looks perfectly round and everything, but there'll be like a crack all the way through the jewel on one side, or double, like often I've seen it on two sides a crack, and this is actually, it's still in place and everything, but it's floating. And then right at this point here where it's going to be off, you'll see if I just expand it make it big, you'll see the hole will be like this, and then where that first crack is, like that, you'll see the jewel will go up a bit, and I'm exaggerating here, and then maybe down a bit on the other side because it's shifted, right? And where these points are here is where the friction will be, and that friction will wear on the pivots of your wheel, and or on the balance staff. So I'll check those jewels. I've got a 3D microscope that cost me a fortune, and I zoom in on that really close to make sure there's no cracks in those jewels at all, because that will cause, over time, the jewel could come out, or it will cause wear of the pivot and ruin that wheel and the pivot, right? So you'd have to replace the wheel itself, or try to put another wheel and pinion on another shaft, right? Which is not easy. It's difficult. So I look at that as well to make sure that isn't happening with these jewels, and do the examination there. And then when I take this apart, I actually can't stand the cap jewels here. When you've got this is very Swiss, so it's not North American, because the screws for this, I believe, I'll have to look again closer, but usually the screws for this are on the bottom. Maybe they're on the top on this one. Let me have a quick look. Let me look. No, they're on the top. So it's still a pain in the Batinsky, though, because you have to take these jewels out, or you have to take these screws out on the top here, and then you remove this whole plate on the top, and that's where the balance, the top and bottom jewels are for the balance, right? So and that's just a pain in the butt to put that back, right? Because you're screwing that into the main balance cock, right? So taking those out, but you got to take them off on the top and the bottom. You've got to clean them, and you've got to put a little tiny bit of oil on the jewel itself, and then put it all back together again. And that is a job you got to do. That'll give you a lot better amplitude. And you also have to put the special oil that you have to put on the jewels on the pallet fork. And that oil, I did a video on oil a while back, but that oil looks like this, Mobius 9415 oil. So that's the oil that goes on the jewels of the pallet fork, right? So when the escapement goes around, it catches and releases that pallet fork, and this actually improves the amplitude significantly, I found. I've done it with and without, the amplitude really sucks, especially on older watches. You put that on, and it allows it to slide off to uncatch, basically, right, on one side. So anyway, I'll end up doing all of that when I disassemble this watch and start working on it. So that's my video. It's phase 1, I'll call it, of the Admiral pocket watch inspection. I'll name it that on YouTube. And then any questions you have, please get a hold of me. I'll answer them. I answer all my YouTube questions. I really appreciate you folks watching these videos. Someone told me that my voice is very monotone, so it helps them sleep at night. I've had some pretty interesting comments over the years on my videos. Usually it's appreciated, because I go through this, and I also tell you the challenges I have and the things I may not know. I don't claim to be an expert. I've just done a lot of this, and you learn from doing a lot of this. Oh, another thing I know about this movement, that it's Swiss, is that this little screw here, you've got to actually unscrew that screw to pull the stem out, right? So you don't unscrew it all the way, you unscrew it a bit, and there's a claw that's pressing down on the stem, and it releases that claw to pull the stem out, which is a European thing, baby. You didn't do that in Walthams and Elgins, and Hamilton watches don't have that screw. Maybe the new ones do, but the old ones didn't. So I just noticed that. So anyway, that's it. Thanks for watching. Again, if you have any questions, just get a hold of me. I'm going to publish the video right now, and I don't have any jokes today. I went out, my wife asked me to cut branches, so I took my reciprocating saw and I went on Amazon. I bought this blade that looks like a blade of death, and man, I bought it. It was about this long, which is an 8-inch blade, and I used it for cutting branches, and it went through everything. So that's what I did before I came up to do this, and the watch has been running for 10 minutes successfully. Oh my god. Oh my god. Kermit the Frog, Kermit the Frog, Kermit the Frog. Anyway, thanks a lot, and I'll check you out later. Bye.